Welcome everyone on this new episode of Let's Talk. I'm super happy to be here today with Malcom Hawker. Malcolm, how are you doing?
I am excellent. How are you, Thomas?
Doing very great. So, for the people who are listening, this is the second time we're recording because I had some internet problems, and I'm super happy to meet with you again and for taking the time. For the people who might not know the show, we deep dive with experts about data AI, and we just have conversations about their journey, insights, learnings, careers, and so on. So, if you enjoy, feel free to give a review on whatever you're listening. That being said, I'm super happy to have you on the show today. Maybe for the people who might not know you, could you do like a 1 minute introduction of yourself?
Sure. I'm Malcom Hawker. I'm the head of data strategy with Profisee software. I've been in the data and analytics space a long time. This is real gray hair. I have run an IT function for a $2 billion publicly traded company. I have been a consultant multiple times. I've worked for a number of different vendor companies. I've worked for software companies. I've worked for data companies. I was a Gartner analyst for 3 years, where I was talking to CDOs and CIOs all day, every day, writing magic quadrant documents and doing market research. Currently, my role is head of data strategy. So I wear two different hats. I help drive and determine our data strategy as well as our product strategy. Profisee is a vendor of MDM, Master Data Management Software. And I'm also very active in the field, talking with our clients, helping our clients get the most out of their investments with data and analytics, getting the most out of an investment in MDM and data quality. So that's what I do. I've got a podcast called CDO Matters. Thank you for allowing me on yours, my friend. I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn. I share everything I know publicly. I'm very interested to talk more about AI because everybody's talking about AI. It's my honor to be here today.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for being here today. That's an honor. So maybe for the people who I like to talk about the state of the art of the guests, and by that I mean what you're currently doing. So you're talking about MDM, but if you had to phrase your mission and your vision and what drives you in the
Yes.
field, you've been in it for a long time. You've seen different things. So why do you do what you're doing, and what excites you about it?
Yes. Well, again, I live in a bit of a dual world. One, I work for a software company and I'm extremely passionate about helping our customers get the most out of their investments in data. My passion, what I focus on mostly, and this even includes my job, what I do day in and day out working for a software company, my passion is helping increase the tenures of chief data officers. We've got a real problem in the data and analytics space. CDOs are now at 80% of most companies. So whether that is a real C-level role or an equivalent, most companies now have a CD, a chief data officer. However, the tenures of chief data officers are one half the tenures of a chief information officer. We've got a real problem in the data and analytics space. Only 44%, according to Gartner's latest CDO survey, only 44% of CDOs say that their team is delivering meaningful value to their organizations. Only 24% of companies say they are truly data driven. We've got a huge opportunity with data through AI. There's a massive opportunity just sitting right in front of us. And my goal is to help data leaders figure out how to deliver value to their organizations, increase their tenures, increase their customer satisfaction, and for once and for all, for us all to become more data driven.
hmm Awesome. So I'll pursue on a second, but I'd like to take a tangent and ask you about these facts that you just mentioned,
Yeah,
and CDO compared to CIO compared to other C levels or
yeah,
leadership roles. So I'm very curious to ask you about why do you think that is, meaning CDOs having less times in
yeah.
their roles than a CIO and so on, and what shift do you think is most optimized for companies? So what do I mean by that?
Yeah.
Maybe because the CDO is responsible, and so I would love to have your definition of the CDO, and what makes a great CDO. But maybe when I'm thinking of the CDO, it needs the CMO, CIO, or whatever C level to apply the technology, the vision of the data, and the quality of the data to the business cases. And maybe this is why sometimes the CIO takes over the CDO. But this is just speculation. I'm just curious. What
Yeah.
do you think?
Yeah. Well, so the first question was why?
Yeah. Why?
If organizations are struggling to get value out of data, if CDOs are struggling to show their value to their organizations, then why? There's a lot of data here, but most of the data that we have is what I would say is self-reported. So there's a number of different institutions, including my old employer, Gartner, that take surveys every year and ask CDOs what their major challenges are. So
Hmm.
consistently, CDOs will say things like, "Well, my major challenge is that we don't have a data culture, or that there is a lack of data literacy, or there is a lack of senior executive commitment around the data and analytics function. There's a lack of focus on governance." I could keep going, but there's all of these lists of things that CDOs say are major roadblocks. But I would argue all of those roadblock blocks are under our control. They're under the CDO control. If you're building 300 dashboards and nobody is using the dashboards, why? You could say, well, they're not data driven. They don't see the value in data. They don't get it. They don't understand it. That's one perspective. Another perspective would be to say, wow, our products suck. If nobody's using our products, nobody sees the value in the products. Maybe that's on us.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that we're not doing well. Maybe we could be doing better, right? Maybe we could be building products that people want to use. Maybe we could be providing data to show the business improvement by through that data. So
Hmm.
something that I say all the time, Thomas, and people kind of scratch their heads on this, but it's an absolute truth. We know this to be true because there's actually data to back this up. Data people, including most CDOs, do not have data on the value of their data. It would be like building products and putting them on a shelf in a store and not having a price tag on them. Most CDOs cannot tell you the business value that their data provides. What is it worth to have one highly curated, well governed, high quality customer record? What does it mean to an organization to improve their data governance? If I improve my data quality by 5%, how much revenue does that drive the organization? Most CDOs cannot tell you that. So there's a lot of us who are very prone to say, well, we're not succeeding because the business doesn't get the value of the data. The business is not data literate. The business is not data driven. At the same time, I would argue there's a ton of opportunity for data leaders to focus more on actually producing data to show the value of investments in data and analytics, to focus more inwardly on building better products that
Hmm.
customers actually want to use.
Hmm. Oh, awesome. Uh, just last question on these topics.
Yeah,
This is a bit of a drift off, but I find it super interesting. I always enjoy like asking to mainly CMOs. This is what I've been asking the most. Like
yeah.
how they, like what are their pains and so on, and what you describe about like I have 300 dashboards, but if I don't build those hand in hand with them, or like trying to understand what's the priorities for like each department that I'm supposed to add value to, it is very hard to like quantify then this value. And like I think quantifying those values might be like might need collaboration, because I can just comes up with calcul and numbers and just share with C levels. All right, this is the value we're adding, but because I did it all on my own, it feels like a number that I came up with. So what do I want to go with that? If you were to like arrive in a new company, I think I don't know, 50 to 200 employees, and like you're taking over the entire CDO role. So like, what things would you do first? What would you try to measure first to show your value and like have more credibility to do further things on?
Well, I would dive headlong into trying to figure out and come up with metrics to measure the value of data. So I'm glad you mentioned the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer, because that is one example where I don't know of many marketing organizations that are not data driven, right? I can tell you with certainty that any marketing organization worth anything can tell you what one sales qualified lead is worth. Most more marketing organizations can tell you how much it costs to generate a lead. Most marketing organizations can tell you how long it takes for that lead to become a customer. So there are KPIs, even in just the three examples that I just gave, or marketing organizations can tell you about how long customers are retained or the average sales price per customer. If the data sitting underneath those KPIs is bad or is low quality or is inaccurate, right? If lead data sitting in your CRM is inaccurate or is missing data, or you don't have a complete view because maybe you don't have a hierarchy for company related information within your CRM, and you can't see relationships that exist between sales leads, then you're leaving money on the table. Or if that lead data is inaccurate, then you're not probably going to convert it very well because you're going to call the wrong phone number. You're going to call somebody by the wrong name. Your sales organization is going to be far less efficient than it could be. So these are all examples. If you figure out where we are, and if we improve that data, if we improve the processes, if we speed up the process through better data, what will that yield the marketing organization?
Hmm.
Most marketing organizations can answer those questions. They will tell you what a qualified lead is worth. Right?
Hmm.
And by doing some basic work to understand the existing baseline of your data quality, what could it become if we changed it, if we improved it? How would we improve the business processes? That marketing
Hmm.
organization will tell you, aha, that could be worth $100,000 a year. Same is
Hmm.
true with any procurement organization. Same is true with any finance organization. And I could keep going on. Any manufacturing function will tell you how much money could be saved if you sped up the manufacturing process because you didn't run out of materials or you didn't run out of supplies because your forecast was more accurate.
Hmm.
I could literally go on for hours dropping KPIs that are driven by data. A
Yeah.
KPI is a formula, numerator,
Uh-huh.
denominator,
Yeah.
field. And if those fields are better or improved, better managed, there will be
Hmm.
a business impact.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And like every KPIs can have like different calculations. Like the same KPI might be calculated differently, like from
Yeah.
one department to another or like one company to another. But like just knowing how to calculate it and being able to track over time and having like a baseline metric that I know I
Yep.
can optimize for, because if we don't have that, whatever we will do, whatever data quality we will implement, and we'll be able to comment on MDM and so on. But
Well,
yeah, it
let's talk
is.
about AI. I mean, it, most artificial intelligence, most data science functions live within a data and analytics organization.
Mm-hmm.
Data scientists are in the business of building models. They try to build models that represent the real world, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we run a data and analytics function, if we're a CDO and we're out there saying, I can't tell you how much our data is worth, I can't tell you what it's worth to improve the data. Yet at the same time, I have a data science function which is doing forecasts of future customer needs or forecast of future materials that are going to be needed in our manufacturing process 9 months into the future. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
the same CDO saying, oh, it's too hard because measuring the value of data, it's second and third and fourth degree benefits. The benefits are not direct. The benefits are all indirect. If I'm that CDO and then I'm also got a data science function where people are building models to predict futures of things,
Mm-hmm.
there's a bit of a split there. This is my way of saying if anybody can measure the value of data, it's us. And if we can't, we're basically saying I cannot measure the value of my own job,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which is a tough spot to be in. I wouldn't want to be that person. So that's the first thing I would do is if I was hired as a new CEO,
Uh-huh.
CDO, I would be focused. I would be focused on 5 or 10, not
Uh-huh.
100, not 1,000, 5 or 10 high priority, high visibility KPIs that I know we could improve through better data management.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Um, well, maybe just last thing, because I'm very curious about this.
Yeah.
When you discuss CIOs, so I'm a bit confused in terms of like the responsibilities of the CIO and the responsibilities of the CDO. It seems to me that they should really be best friends and like work hand to
Yes.
hand. But what do you think?
Oh, I absolutely think they should be best friends. I mean, a lot of CDOs report to CIOs. So those CDOs are not necessarily kind of true C-level executives, but yes, they should absolutely be best friends. They should be tied at the hip, right? If I am a CIO that is responsible for corporate network or corporate infrastructure, responsible for all the back office systems, there are plenty of CIOs that are responsible for all of the cloud infrastructures that are running and managing data for most organizations. So
Mm.
absolutely, one is infrastructure, and the other could be more business strategy, policy, procedure, more governance focused, more business enablement focused. But they should absolutely be tied at the hip, most
Mhm.
certainly.
Awesome. All right. So, okay, I think I close the loop of C-level in, in these questions. But, okay, so MDM, Master Data
Yeah,
Management. Um, what are the main things, what are the main challenges that you're seeing? So we
yeah,
were speaking about measuring the value of MDM, and
yeah.
it really seems that is super important,
Yes,
but it is also hard to measure. What are like the main challenges that you see
yes.
in your clients when speaking about MDM in general?
Well, let's talk about MDM just conceptually first.
Awesome.
So there's a few challenges related to master data management at kind of a more of a theoretical level
Mm-hmm.
than there is when it comes to actually implementation. We can talk about challenges related to implementation because I know those incredibly well. But the biggest challenge with MDM, at least as a concept, right? Most people think MDM is a single version of the truth, like one version of the truth, right? Like one customer record to rule them all, one supplier, one material record. The challenge is that the notion of truth is contextually bound, meaning there are different truths in the organization. What is true to somebody at a functional level within a sales role may not be true to somebody who is at a cross functional level in a finance role, right? Truth exists, I would argue, at three levels in an organization: functional, cross functional, enterprise wide.
Mm-hmm.
Those requirements are different based on where you are and how you are using the data. So when we talk about MDM, master data management, companies are often really struggled because they don't recognize that truth can exist in multiple places and that what is true to a marketing person may not be true to a finance person. So that means it's hard because there's multiple truths you need to answer. At the same time, if your CFO asks, how many customers do we have? There's only one answer, right? So you need to be able to serve both of those needs. You need to serve the needs at a functional level and allow marketing people to have a certain degree of autonomy in the data they manage in a CRM. At the same time, you need to support the CFO and the CEO for when they ask, how many customers do we have? Again, only one version of the truth there. So it becomes difficult. It can be difficult, particularly when you're talking about data governance, because instead of having one set of business rules, one customer definition, one quality standard for customer, one structure of that record, one set of metadata for a customer record, you're talking now about N sets of business rules because there are multiple levels of truth. So that's what can make MDM hard. When it comes to implementation of MDM, there's a lot of things that companies can do wrong, but there's a lot of ways to get it right as well. The biggest things that we see from an implementation perspective, if you were looking to implement MDM, number one is management of scope. Don't try to do too much. I see too many companies trying to do these big bang, focus on a domain. That's what they're focused on. I would not do that. I would focus on a business process, right? Like quote to cash. MDM is the data that literally exists and holds functions together, right? The
Mm-hmm.
MDM is what exists in the space between sales and finance, or between procurement and finance. When data needs to be shared across those functions, as a
Mm-hmm.
customer record moves out of a CRM system and into an ERP system, that's what MDM does is it allows for sharing of that data across the functions. When you say, oh, well, I'm going to limit my scope by just focusing on a customer domain, well, that's a false limitation of scope because customer data is everywhere, right? Instead, what I would do is focus more on a process like procure to pay or quote to cash and focus on that one specific process. Maybe it's a very, very small portion of a process, but my recommendation is to focus more on a process, not on a domain. Another
Mm-hmm.
thing we see companies struggle with MDM is a lack of executive sponsorship, like getting executives on board. Another thing we see is a lack of ability to quantify the business benefits of MDM, what I was talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
90% of companies cannot tell you the value of an investment of MDM, cannot tell you the business benefits that you're going to get through an investment in MDM. You also have to focus on governance. MDM and governance are friends. You cannot do MDM without some idea of governance, because governance are rules, governance are policies. So if you implement MDM, let's say you want to master your customer data, first question you need to ask is, how do I define a customer?
Mm-hmm.
That's a governance policy. I would argue a data definition is a governance policy. What are our quality standards for customer data? Again, another governance policy. So the rules, as defined by a governance program, are what gets codified and managed and configured into an MDM system to
Mm-hmm.
manage the data automatically and to automate processes related to quality and sharing and definitions of data. So there's a ton of value in MDM. It's incredibly important. It's not going away. It's as important as it's ever been, but it does remain difficult for a lot of companies to succeed at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I'm curious in two questions.
Sure.
The first one being, so my second one will be MDM and data governance, like you mentioned. I was curious, like I
Yeah.
would like to build a link on that. Well, let's go directly there, I think.
Yeah.
So my question would be, um, all right, I'll do it this way. At what point companies, like how big of a company, like how big
Yeah.
a company should be before thinking implementing MDM? That
Good
would be
question.
the
Yeah.
first thing that maybe can be interesting to discuss.
Well, there's no one answer here. Based on literally thousands of conversations I've had over the last 5 years related to MDM, I've seen some commonalities, usually around, let's say, about $1 billion in sales.
Mm-hmm.
When companies start to get to the point where they are doing more mergers and acquisitions, where they start acquiring other companies, where they start to maybe break into different divisions, and it seems to kind of happen around $1 billion to $2 billion in sales for companies. I've worked with some companies where they're 300, 400 million and they're implementing MDM. But really, the greatest value of MDM is to enable sharing of data across highly decentralized organizations,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, can you have a highly decentralized organization that is 200 million in sales? Sure, you can. But what I've seen generally is once you get to a certain size, roughly around $1 billion to $2 billion in revenue, companies start to get to a point where manually managing MDM processes, and the phrase I use in English is it's called a swivel chair, right? Like a chair. Like I take data out of a CRM system, right? A contract data, and then I go and swivel, and then I enter that into an ERP system, right? There's a certain point where companies where that becomes too painful, and
Mm-hmm.
we're manually managing for data stewardship within business applications and manually managing business rules, manually kind of overseeing and changing and merging records or deduping records, where that gets just too painful for
Mm-hmm.
companies, and then they make the move to automate some of those processes through the investment of MDM.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about governance. Governance are policies. That's all governance is, the rules, right? Like, here are the rules for who can create a new customer record. Here are the rules for what a customer record is going to look like. Here are quality standards.
Mm-hmm.
But those really largely exist on paper, right? Or increasingly within some sort of data governance tool, like a data catalog, where you can say, here's how here's my glossary, here's how the business definition of a term, and here is the data definition. But MDM is where those rules are operationalized. MDM automates the management and enforcement of those rules. If you
Mm-hmm.
bring a customer record into an MDM hub that doesn't conform to the rules, well, then action must be taken, right? It'll trigger some exception in an MDM system, and a data steward will need to look at that, or maybe review it, or maybe you can automate the
Mm-hmm.
remediation of that data. But MDM is all about automating business rules that are defined through governance policies.
Awesome. Um, I think I would be curious about how do you educate around this governance. So you set up the governance and
Yeah,
you use an MDM tool to execute, um, and that will have many great things in terms
yeah,
of time saving and money saving and so on. But how do you educate around implementing an MDM? Because it feels like most of the time people are being pressured for whatever
Yes.
tasks they're doing, and so it's like documentation when writing software. No one wants to do it, but when we
Exactly.
start learning how to do it and do it great, it's very useful and it allows for a lot of time saving and it's fun to do. But so how do you educate and speak this leadership around why is it great to do it
Yeah.
and how to put everyone on board?
Yeah. What you described is exactly the case, which is why governance programs tend to be more successful in regulated industries. So if you're a bank or if you're an insurance company, particularly in Europe,
Yeah.
you need to have a governance program to make sure that you're handling data correctly, that you have controls that are in place for that data. Um, and you can go a long way with you must, right, you must
Mm-hmm.
do this because the law says you must do this. But where I would love to see data and analytics organizations get to is where we pivot from governance as a requirement to governance as a business enabler. And
Mm-hmm.
what do I mean by that? Going back to my example before about a sales process, right? About a lead becoming a opportunity becoming a contract. If you just look at a
Mm-hmm.
basic sales process, you could look at governance in that process, and things, even things as simple as required fields in a CRM.
Mm-hmm.
A salesperson could moan about, oh man, like why is this field required? Why do I have
Yeah.
to put this business code, a sick code, or a NAICS code, or why do I have to put these? Why do I have to do this? Why is this seems silly to me?
Mm-hmm.
You can look at one way as saying, oh well, this is slowing me down, and this is a burden, and this is a requirement, and government sucks.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you're a CDO and you're producing data to show the business benefit of that, of that action, of taking that governance action, of filling out that required field, or making sure that the name is correct on a sales account in a CRM system. If you as a CDO can show, hey, there is a benefit to this, and when we improve this data, you actually make more money, right? That's how you make the jump between governance as a requirement and governance as something that people want to do, right? If I see the benefit, if I know the benefit, if I can say I'm selling more and making more sales commissions because I do these things, I'm going to do them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
sales is an easy example because all salespeople are coin operated. They just want more money. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
The same thing could be true in a procurement process, or the same thing could be true in an HR process about how we onboard new employees or onboard new suppliers. What we need to do as data leaders is to show the value of managing data better. If you can do that, I would argue people will get on board.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And what I really like about that is that, all right, it might be a pain,
Yeah,
but with AI, we can kind of start automating those gaps where I need to fill more fields in the CRM. But because I have a strong script
yeah,
of my call, then it will automatically fill and I just have to review it, for example. And that's awesome because as a data person, like all CEOs want to have a clear vision and predictive vision of what we're going to do. And we can't do that, at least then it's called intuition, but we can't do that without like real data. And most of the time it's like hours spent into like trying to predict like from intuition instead of like having this ground brace this like ground truth that we've
yeah,
defined and we've been improving and like knowing like the quality of the data and like knowing that if we take these decisions it have this amount of great data and we've improved this amount. And so it really helps to mix intuition with what we really call data driven. And a lot of time
yeah.
data driven is misused because
Oh, I agree.
we're using data, but this data doesn't mean anything. So
Oh, I completely agree. When I was talking to CDOs every day as for my job, when I would hear them say, "Oh, we're not data driven," what they were really saying when I asked more and more and more questions, when I probed, what those CDOs were really saying is the business isn't doing what I want them to do.
mm,
The business isn't filling out that required field. The business doesn't care about data quality. The business isn't using my dashboard that I built. So that means they're not data driven.
Mm-hmm.
That may not be true. I don't know many business leaders that are not
Yeah.
data driven. Every marketing organization I've worked in or supported or worked for is incredibly data driven. Every finance organization I've ever supported is incredibly data driven. Any manufacturing process I've ever supported is incredibly data driven. Yet we throw this out all the time and say, "Oh, well, we're not data driven," when in fact we are. And you could actually even make a case that intuition is a form of data driven decision making. I've been around a long time, man. I've seen a lot of stuff. I've got a lot of knowledge up here, right? And if I don't have a report in my hand at the very moment I need to make an important decision, if I don't have the data, if I need to make a decision now, right, with limited data available to me, with limited time available to me, all I've got is what's up here. Well, okay, c'est la vie. It has to be like, go ahead, make the decision. But is that bad? No, I wouldn't say it's bad. I would say intuition is a form of a data driven decision because you're drawing on all of your experiences. Now, are there bias? Of course, there's bias because we're humans. All humans are biased, right? Is that decision going to be effective? Who knows? Here's another problem: we don't track the effectiveness of any of the decisions that are made using our data, right? So again, getting back to data, people have no data on the value of data. Are we tracking the effectiveness of decisions used or decisions made using the data we provide? If we say the data says do X and the business does X, do we track that? We on the data side, do we? No. It's called decision science. There's an entire uh, competency around this called decision science, right? Measuring the impacts of decisions. Was it a good decision? Was it a bad decision? Would you do it again? Right? This is another area where, as data people, I think we need to do a lot more. There's way more that we could be doing. We say, let's be data driven because trust us, right? We as data people are saying we need to be data driven. Why? Well, because trust us. That's it. That's intuition.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I want you to be data driven. Like, I want you, the business, to be data driven because it's better. Oh, okay. Can you tell me, like,
Yeah.
if I use your data to make a decision, how much my business is going to improve?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, lots of opportunities here. Lots.
Yeah. I have data in my job's title, so trust me.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you talk about like impacts, and when you talk about understanding, the impacts of policies, the impacts of decisions,
Hmm.
um, there's a lot more work we could be doing. I am seeing some interesting things when it comes to governance. Um, we've got a bit of a data hoarding problem. Um, I've actually started to hear over the last year and a half, 2 years, more people talking about negative impacts, interestingly, to society and to the environment through hoarding data. Um, so that's one example of a policy decision, a lack of retention, or we keep data forever. 50 to 90% of data is what's considered dark, right? It's just sitting in data centers,
Hmm.
right? Most data at most organizations is not used. It's just sitting, getting collecting digital dust.
Hmm.
But we know that the data center industry, so data centers are creating more greenhouse gas than the airline industry and the global shipping industry combined. So that's yet another example of, do we truly understand the impacts of the policies that we have? Do we understand the impacts of what it means to be sitting and like not using data? The list here is very, very long of opportunities that we could be focused on to improve both our business performance, and even when it comes to data hoarding, maybe even improve the environment.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thinking about when we think of metadata and catalogs and metadata catalogs,
Yeah.
I think it could be super interesting. I don't know. I'm just thinking on, but like if like all C levels needed to report to the CDO or like someone in the organization to like track their decisions, and like in some way put their decisions in the system where we can track how often they do decisions and how well it impacts on common metrics, I think that could be like super
Wouldn't
interesting.
that be amazing?
Yeah, that would be
But
crazy.
here's where AI can help.
Yeah.
Right. I don't, today, I think, we would suffer from issues of scale in doing that. And the models there, I think, would be relatively complex because decisions don't exist in a vacuum. There are many interdependencies. There are many,
Yeah.
correlating factors. It's very difficult to go one to one, and draw a causal relationship between a decision and something else. However,
Yeah.
I, you know, AI, I think, can go a long way to help better understand overall business performance. Now, I think it's interesting because ultimately what we're talking about will be, can we draw the decision back to data or can we draw the decision back to an individual? Probably both.
Mm.
And if we start doing a better job of tracking the impacts of decisions, I think we'll start to see and develop metrics on the effectiveness of individuals,
Mm. Yeah.
which I think is a really, really, really good thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I think we need to be prepared for some rather what's the right way to say this? We need to be willing as leaders to create the visibility to show our own effectiveness,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
how effective we are being. So it's, man, there is so much we could be doing around AI in this space. It's tons of opportunity.
Definitely. And it's not because there is, okay, so when I'm thinking, like, for example, if like someone is running ads, and so I don't track the direct conversions from the ads, but because it builds brand
Great example.
awareness, people will buy then, and I won't have a like concrete way to. I mean, I can have, but sometimes not. I won't know like it comes from the ads because this person saw the ad two times and then it converted into a sale. I can see that, but I think when we're speaking of that, like before, like achieving the correlation like between each individual, I think it doesn't really matter like if we're able to assign to one person and maybe like the actions of like three people are correlated to a specific outcome, and it doesn't matter like to know the percentage of each one. What matters is like I know they impacted these results, and so I think this like will be the first step before being able to like have those attribution model where we can like
Yes.
fully analyze. Uh, I don't know. That's super excited.
Well, I think
But
I think a lot of the big advertising companies are, and we're getting way off topic here, but this is okay.
yeah,
I love talking about this stuff. I think a lot of the big advertising companies are investing so heavily in wearables because of something that you just said, which is relationship between people and influencing on sales. So today, when it comes to attribution, we can look at marketing activities, like you said. We can look at, did you see the ad? Did you get the snail mail? Did you interact with something on Instagram? We see that like direct attribution back to marketing activities. What we don't see today is how those people are interacting with other people. And
yeah,
that's arguably way more impactful from a sales perspective. Because if I tell you, hey, this is the greatest phone ever, right? That could have a lot of influence on a sales process. But today, an advertiser would never know that I told you it was the greatest phone ever, unless I did a review on Yelp or unless I wrote a review on something. But if there's a wearable on me, right,
mm,
and they're tracking my interactions with you, incredibly powerful from a selling perspective. And we're already seeing this in terms of influence on B2B software and using influencers to sell things on LinkedIn. I
yeah,
mean, it is, I see it every day now. So it's interesting, man. There's so much we could be doing with data when it comes to relationships and networks of people. That's where I
yeah.
think wearables are going to get a lot of traction.
Awesome. It will be like the next level of affiliate marketing.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Next level.
Yeah.
Uh, I have one question that will take us back on track, but I really enjoy this drift, which is all right. So this is a hard question, I guess, but maybe not. You'll tell me. What's the best implementation of MDM that you've ever seen? Like a company, maybe it's your company, but like, and if not the best, like what are like the key actions or directives that allow the best use of MDM and the most value out of it?
Yeah. I distinctly remember interacting once with a railroad company, believe it or not, a small railroad company who had implemented MDM and could tell me exactly what it was worth to their organization through the implementation of MDM, what the ROI was of MDM. And they could tell me that because they were actually tracking the benefits associated to having better lead and marketing and sales related data. So all they had done is use MDM to make a bridge between a CRM system and an ERP system, and to bridge those two worlds together, and to make them more efficient. But they could
Mm.
follow customer data effectively all the way from an initial lead perspective, where they were kind of trying to sell freight services to other companies, so they were B two
Hmm.
B, but they could follow that all the way through to recognized revenue, and they were using MDM to optimize business at every business process along the way. Now, was it a huge implementation of MDM? No. Was it an incredibly complex? Reasonably complex, because they were using it both as an operational lever, but also an analytical lever. So there's really two ways to use MDM. One is to produce better reports. It's called an analytical style of MDM, where all I'm doing is creating a 360-degree view of something: customer,
Hmm.
asset, employee, location, doesn't matter, but where I can see across systems, and I can see Thomas, Thomas, Tom, T. I could see the five different versions of your customer record, and I can see them, and I know that they're all the same, even though they have different attributes. They've got different metadata. They've got, even different values in some of the fields. I know these five things are the same thing, so I'll aggregate the reporting for that for you,
Hmm.
and I could show a complete relationship with you. This company was doing that, but they were also using MDM operationally, which was for some business processes, they were creating a single version of the truth, particularly their finance related processes, and controlling who could create new customer records within a financial perspective, within the financial system. So that's an example where I saw a very mature implementation of MDM at a relatively small company, but where they had done it right.
Mm.
Um, there's a lot of ways to get it right, and there's a lot of things to be focused on, but a in the future, I would argue a highly effective, highly mature form of MDM will be one where you have multiple versions of the truth, where you're
Mm.
taking what I would call more of an adaptive or context centric view of the truth, where you acknowledge there are multiple uses of data, where you've got multiple sets of business rules that are being used, where you leverage the power of MDM for not only analytics but also for business processes, that like I was talking about, where you're using
Hmm.
MDM to fuel AI driven processes as well, where data scientists are comfortable using the output of an MDM system instead of writing custom Python or R to do things like entity resolution. So there's in the future, MDM is not going away. I do see MDM becoming more of a focal point for multiple processes. I see it becoming something that is incredibly important to what I'm calling knowledge management.
Hmm.
So today, I would argue we do data management. In the future, where we need to get to is what I would call knowledge management. So there's this thing called a DIKW pyramid: data, information, knowledge, wisdom. It's this pyramid shaped. At the bottom is data, at the top is wisdom. Data, information, knowledge, wisdom. Where we need to get to is wisdom. We need to move away from just data. I would
Hmm.
argue data plus metadata, it's kind of information. We get into information because we got a bit more context. When you add in semantics on top of that, when you add
Hmm.
in semantics on top of information, where you have more of a kind of a graph based view of the world, where you have full context, where you have maybe even stories around data and how data is being used, which is how AI consumes most, at least most Gen AI consumes
Hmm.
more text and data. That's where we need to get to, is managing knowledge instead of just data. That's what a successful MDM implementation in the future will look like. Will be deeply powered by what I would call some form of a next gen semantic layer to go just beyond the static one state in time management of a customer record to something that is a little more fluid in the future. I threw a lot
Mm.
at you there, but
No, loved it. No, that's great.
okay.
Yeah, and I love like thinking about this continuously evolving knowledge graph, both in
Yes.
terms of data and metadata, that can allow specific models to like go and find wisdom nuggets for us. So today we're like looking at this evolving data and trying to make the best sense of it with our limited CPU
Yes.
or brains. And we try to build models that like do
Yeah.
predictions at it and so on. But in the future, this process can be enhanced, augmented. Of course, humans in the loop are great, but yeah, I definitely see like this is awesome. This was my next question. I was about to like do take a tangent on AI. Like, how do you see? Well, maybe I can ask you. So when I say AI, I don't mean Gen AI. I mean like
Yeah.
whatever classical machine learning we can think of, like random
Yeah.
forest or like basic things, but also Gen AI. And so, what are the main things that you can think of in terms of leveraging ML AI on MDM, and not in like, for example, I'm in the sales department and I want
Yeah.
to do like predictive or churn, or in marketing, and I want like more in terms of like the data itself,
Yeah.
relating
Yeah.
to what you mentioned about how I'm going to measure the value of data, more related to that. Yeah. Do you have thoughts?
Yeah. I view kind of classic AI, AI in through two different lenses. One is classic ML, classic AI. I'm going to build a custom model of something. I'm going to build a model that predicts future sales
Mm.
of something.
Mhm.
Historically, that data science team has existed outside of traditional data management processes, right? The data science team and data scientists, that process is highly creative and highly iterative, where they don't want to get data out of an MDM hub. They don't want to get data out of a data quality hub. They don't want to get data that has already been transformed or normalized or tinkered with in some way, because they don't
Mhm.
know what they're looking at, right? They don't want to get data out of an MDM hub that's already been run through an entity resolution process, because they want the raw data, because they want complete control over it in the process of creating their models. Makes total sense to me. People will be out there, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I need to do entity resolution. Bill Smith, William J. Smith. Is that one thing? Is that three things? Oh, I'll write some custom Python for that. There are Python libraries that do that reasonably well. But that portion of the kind of the AI ML world has largely existed outside of what I would call traditional data management. Traditional
Mm.
data management is where I go get data out of a CRM system, an ERP system. I put it through data pipelines. Maybe I run some data quality processes on it to normalize it all, to get it into standard structure. Maybe I do MDM to some of it to have a common definition and some common ontologies, common hierarchies, and then I put it over here so it can be used for analytics, or maybe even used for operational processes. But those classic data management processes, I would argue, are not what most AI and ML and data scientists are using day in and day out. And I
Yeah.
think that's okay. But I think where we need to get to more in the future is that for Gen AI in particular, and for AI that you want to productize widely within your organization, where you want to have build a custom copilot that's running in business application one, or custom copilots running business application two, business application three. We're going to have copilots all over the place. You're going to have your own smart agent that is your copilot that helps you do your job.
Mm.
If you were looking to kind of mass produce those things and you need to be more scalable, then I would argue that those processes, particularly copilots, a few other processes, need to be running and managing and using data that is governed, structured, managed, that falls under more of that classic data management swim lane, right? Because you can't
Mm.
just go build, you're not going to go build custom language models. It doesn't make, some big companies will, but most companies are not going to be out there building your own language models, at least in the short term, right?
Mhm.
You're going to be using Hugging Face. You're going to be going to one of the 1,600 language models that are out there. You're going to be leveraging those, and you're going to be using data that is scalable and flexible, and that you can wash, rinse, and repeat.
Mhm.
Those are that's kind of where I'm focused a little bit more from an MDM and a governance and a data quality perspective, is that how do we improve our processes
Mhm.
to allow at least Gen AI solutions, particularly copilots and smart agents, allow companies to scale in that area, because today I would argue they're not doing a very good job of that.
Mhm. Awesome. Yes. Yeah, and I think it is the key to unlock visibility on brand awareness and like measure new things and do like, for example, competitors analysis.
Yeah,
And
great
because
example.
we can define what data means, and when it get inside, we have machine learning models and pipelines and quality checks. We're able to look at concrete data and measure things in a more significant way.
Yeah, the problem, maybe opportunity. And I
Hmm.
actually just published an article in Forbes that is published today, I think, actually. And the title of that article was the AI governance elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room, at least for data people like me, is that Gen AI solutions are built on and optimized by, and
Hmm.
what I mean by that is through complex prompting. They're built on and optimized through text, not rows and columns, right? Most of the insights that we have in our organizations today are sitting buried in rows and columns, structured data, right?
Hmm.
So the question becomes, all right, if I want to do a competitive analysis, to your point, great use
Hmm.
case. If I want to do a competitive analysis and I don't want the LLM to hallucinate, I don't want it to come up with fake competitors that don't exist,
Hmm.
and I want it to use the most robust information that we've got. I want it to use information that we have sitting in rows and columns related to previous sales or historical sales and compare us to others. How do you get that data in a format that you can stuff into a rag pattern that the LLM can consume? Right? How do you and all that data is sitting buried in text today. Vectorize the text, yes, maybe not some combination of vector databases and graphs, but how do we go from data that is largely it's sitting unstructured, ungoverned into a
Hmm.
format that some copilot can easily digest as a part of a complex prompt?
Hmm.
That's where I see a lot of opportunity in the short term.
Yeah, that was awesome. We could talk about agents and so on. Awesome, amazing. Maybe one last question.
Yeah.
I guess two. But very like this is the end of the episode, and if
Okay.
you're still listening, thank you very much. I hope that you're having as much of a good time as I am currently having. Where can people find more about yourself, books, blogs, articles, and so on?
Thank you. So LinkedIn. So Malcolm Hawker, Hawker. There's only talking about entity resolution. There's only three of me on the planet. If you spell my name correctly, there's only three of us, at least on the LinkedIn universe. So
Mm.
if you're listening to this, please connect with me on LinkedIn. If you've got questions about anything I've said, DM me on LinkedIn. I will absolutely respond. I'm extremely active on LinkedIn every single day. So that's way number one. The other is through my podcast, a CDO Matters podcast. I publish a podcast every 2 weeks where I'm talking about exactly the same things that I was just talking with you about, Thomas. The third way is through my company and my company's website, Profisee, Profisee.com. I publish a ton of content, white papers, blogs, you name it. The last way to get to stay in touch is through industry events. So I'm on the road every spring and fall, almost every week. So I don't know when this episode will publish, but the second week of May, I will be in London for the Gartner Data and Analytics Summit. I travel the world going to events, whether it's data governance events, data related events. So that would be another way to connect with me. So I appreciate it.
Amazing. And last question is, would you have a message for the Let's Talk AI community? It can be anything, something that we discussed here or not.
What's my message to the Let's Talk AI community? Oh my gosh. Focus on business value, right? The one lesson old folks like me learned when we were tinkering with big data 10 to 12 years ago is that we built amazing solutions that nobody was asking for, that we couldn't tie back to specific business problems, that we couldn't tie back to specific business outcomes. We built systems that answered some of the most difficult questions that nobody was asking. That's the death of Hadoop. That's the death of big data. And this time around, when it comes to AI, there's so many cool things we could be doing and so many interesting models we could be building. But if we're not solving a business problem, it doesn't matter. Focus on
Mm.
the business, focus on solving a specific problem that will drive value for your organization. That's absolutely positively key.
Amazing. Well, Malcolm, had an amazing time, and I wish you to have an amazing day. Thank you very much.
Yeah, me too. Hope to do it again. Thanks.